News in the District of Columbia, and it's not good news, but we'll share it with you next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
WMAL News at 6. Good morning, everyone. I'm John Matthews. A major storm that'll be with us all day is pulling into the area this morning with rain that'll bring flooding to low-lying spots and later heavy wind.
It's going to be a windswept rain with winds that are going to be sustained out of the southeast between 20 and 30 miles per hour, but gusts could peak up to 50 miles per hour, where we have wind advisories in effect starting at 3 p.m. inside the D.C. metro.
7 News meteorologist Eileen Whalen. Storm prep well underway. The floodgates are up at the Georgetown waterfront, and
the city of Alexandria started contacting residents and business owners yesterday, including distributing sandbags and warning the public about this storm. The city also saying the widespread rainfall and strong winds will create the potential for flooding this afternoon and tomorrow morning, reminding everyone, turn around, don't drown. 7 News reporter Joy Wang. Some local school systems have adjusted their schedules to keep kids and staff from the worst of the storm. Schools in Spotsylvania County are closed today. Others are closing 2 to 3 hours early. They include Fredericksburg City and Stafford and Fauquier County schools in Virginia. Schools also closing early in Anne Arundel, Howard, Calvert, and St. Mary's counties in Maryland. When Maryland lawmakers return to Annapolis this week, one of the major issues they'll be dealing with is crime. Governor Wes Moore telling 7 News.
From the jump, we have said that there's going to be no higher priority for our administration than making sure that people feel safe.
Yet some prosecutors have been pushing back against reforms passed in 2022 that keep juveniles from being held responsible for nonviolent crimes. Montgomery County State's Attorney John McCarthy is looking to change that.
I think there will be certain things that were done that I don't think that necessarily people understood the consequence of what they were doing.
Governor Moore holds a news conference this morning to spell out his priorities for the new legislative session. Same-sex marriage has been legal for nearly a decade in this country, but a move is on to enshrine it in Virginia's Constitution.
We want to make sure that even if the Supreme Court were to change course, that people would be guaranteed the right to marry regardless of their race or gender.
Virginia State Senator Adam Ebbin, while Victoria Cobb with the Family Foundation argues removing the language of man and woman will have a ripple effect.
Should this enter our Virginia Constitution, that becomes fact, and all of those policies go in a certain direction, and one that many people don't agree with, such as boys playing in girls' sports.
Barbara Britt, WMAL and WMAL.com.
We're awaiting further word concerning a crash at an exterior gate of the White House last night. An older model Cadillac Escalade struck the gate at 15th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue shortly before.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's a busy Tuesday morning in the nation's capital. It's 6:06. Thanks for tuning in here. It's O'Connor and Company, and we've got some rain coming in that's going to disrupt our day, possibly disrupt your kids' school schedule, so we'll get you updated on that all day long here on WMAL. Also this morning at 7:05, Bruce Fleming will join us, a professor at the Naval Academy, about his new book, Saving Our Service Academy. 7:35, journalist David Marcus will join us. 8:05, Representative Andy Biggs on a big week on Capitol Hill, starting with the impeachment process of Alejandro Mayorkas. And then at 8:35, Sean Kennedy, Virginians for Safe Communities. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And following up on Sean Kennedy joining us for Virginians for Safe Communities. Of course, Virginians for Safe Communities includes the District of Columbia and parts of Maryland because, we have an interstate highway system.
Yes.
And
yes.
Crime travels across borders. As a resident of Northern Virginia and Alexandria, you see a direct effect of the criminal activity in the District of Columbia, don't you?
I do. And it's funny because there's chatter among people in Alexandria about where there's danger. And it's always the major sort of egress in and out of the city,
Sure.
or out of the city rather. So there's some, there's some stores over in the Crystal City area, which if you're familiar, you hop right on 395 and go right over the bridge and you're back in Washington. Same thing, any exit that goes directly to the Beltway.
Same thing with Prince George's County and Montgomery County as well. And sadly, the politics of Washington, D.C., local politics, I should be clear to point out, not the federal politics in Washington, D.C., Boy, there's a lot of politics in
Yes.
Washington, D.C. The local politics, though, the ethic and the culture and the approach has actually sort of had this ripple effect as well in concentric circles outside of the district. That includes Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Arlington County, Alexandria, into Fairfax County. Basically, they're treating criminals the same lax way that D.C. has done.
Yes.
And so that's why we've got an update on a lot of things. You mentioned Northern Virginia, specifically Crystal City. Arlington County Board Chairman has now specifically called out the DA, or the Commonwealth's attorney, more specifically, who is one of those Soros prosecutors, has been put up, Parisa Dehghani-Tafti, saying, "We are sick and tired of your soft-on-crime nonsense. We control your budget." There are quoting now, there are instances where police do arrest folks and they end up back on the street pretty quickly and commit crimes again, and that needs to stop, said the Garvey, the chair of the Arlington County Board of Supervisors, who earlier that day had become the county board, or excuse me, had become the chair.
Yeah.
This is basically the first statement made. Garvey made clear that the 5-member county board had no statutory authority to instruct prosecutor on how to run the office. We can't tell the Commonwealth attorney what to do, but we control the purse strings.
Yes.
And so we've got something to say about it. Now, this is a Democrat on Democrat incident that we're reporting to you, but it tells you that even Democrats in Arlington recognize the problem.
Yeah, and look, she just won re-election, this Parisa Dehghani-Tafti. Okay,
she's exactly who the people of Arlington want.
Yes, and this has been incredibly frustrating for people who live in the area, that they witness this uptick in crime. They see these violent criminals being released. You know, if you go on Nextdoor or any of these, sort of listservs, you see people saying, "Gosh, all this crime in our neighborhood," and then they reelect this woman.
Yeah.
So, I have sympathy for people who live in the area, but at the same time, like, they wouldn't dream of voting for a Republican.
Well, and listen, we should recognize that that's the case. What we need to do now with our voices, if we can, is to put political pressure on Democrats to do just what this Democrat is doing.
Yes.
So, just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean you're insane, or maybe it does, but it's up to you to actually go on the record and make that clear, right? And by the way, this Arlington County Board chair who is calling out this lack of criminal prosecution in Arlington County, obviously exercising the white patriarchy here, because it's oh, I'm sorry, Arlington County Board Chair Libby Garvey is an African American woman who is pointing this out.
You're absolutely right. We've seen this horror show in this country on crime on the border, and Democrats are largely silent on this
Yes,
stuff.
they are.
So you're right. At least this is a Democrat calling out another Democrat.
Over in Loudoun County, the newly elected Commonwealth Attorney Bob Anderson, a Republican who did win that race, Loudoun County, still some hope for Loudoun County, has actually now officially in control of the Commonwealth Attorney's office, gave an interview to Nick Minnock over at ABC7 saying that his promise is to aggressively prosecute drug dealers, thieves, and violent criminals. That's the plan, which, by the way, why is that not the plan for every Commonwealth attorney or district attorney or state's attorney within the sound of our voice?
You commit a crime and there's punishment? Yeah.
In Tyson's Corner, we had a retail theft of $4,500 in handbags. 4 individuals have been arrested. This is, again, one of those, like, swarm into the store and just, fill a shopping or a garbage bag full of items and then try to leave. Well, these people were actually eventually arrested. They were caught on the freeway on the highway, after fleeing Tyson's Corner with nearly $5,000 worth of handbags. Although recently I've seen some of the prices of handbags. That could be one handbag.
Yeah, exactly.
$4,500 worth, but I believe it was more than that.
Wow.
Meanwhile, over in Washington, D.C., a pot dealer is applying to open a store within 300 feet of a D.C. school. What could happen there? And by the way, I was kind of libertarian on the drug issue, especially marijuana, and I was sort of with Bill Buckley who before he died wrote a pretty impassioned article saying, it's time to legalize marijuana. The war on drugs isn't working. Conservatives shouldn't keep throwing good money after bad on programs that just don't solve the problem you claim you're going to solve. And in my heart, I'm still pretty libertarian on it. If people want to smoke weed, let them smoke weed. The problem is the laws are not being enforced. We do still have laws about public smoking. You're not supposed to smoke it walking down the street. You're not supposed to smoke it publicly. Right now, in all the jurisdictions that have legalized marijuana use in this area in the Mid-Atlantic, it's for home private use in your home.
And you would never know it because you
Good
walk.
Lord.
Oh my gosh. Everything smells like pot.
DC smells like Cheech and Chong's car.
I was driving, and there was a car in front of me, and they were smoking, and they had their window down, and I had to pull over and get away from them because I would have gotten a contact high.
I'm with you. It's so gross.
The person was driving, obviously smoking weed, and blowing it out so that it was coming through my vents.
I came to the Commanders game this last Sunday. I went to the last game.
I smelled it there too.
Parked in the parking lot. As soon as I opened the door to my car, I almost started gagging from the smell of pot.
Yeah. So let's not have this near a school.
Yeah.
Okay?
Maybe
we
not
can be all
a great
libertarian
idea.
and Bill Buckley about drug legalization, but maybe don't put it near schools.
Well, I doubt that the D.C. Council is going to prioritize that agenda item because they're too busy voting on a convicted murderer's nomination to the D.C. Sentencing Commission. This is Phil Mendelson. We talked about this over the last 2 weeks.
Phil, there's no crime, Mendelson.
Right, who is now wants to put a convicted murderer who has spent a quarter century behind bars for murder. The vote is to happen today.
Yeah, and guess who isn't on that commission? Victims.
Well, they're dead.
Well, or family of victims.
There you go, yeah. Family members of victims do not have a voice in the Sentencing Commission, but an actual convicted murderer will. That will happen today. And these are all indications as to why things are as bad as they are right now. These things, this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. These are deliberate choices that are made by the people who you elect to represent you, or at least your neighbors elect them. Sean Kennedy with Virginians for Safe Communities. He's tracking all of these stories we just laid out for you, and we'll get him to comment on them coming up at 8:35.
WMAL, making sense of the markets, because generational wealth doesn't build itself. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Julie Gunlock, it's a critter news update, although this is also, sadly, a crime news update at the same time. We sort of continue our dissertation on the crime problems here in the area, but this time how it affects critters. Puppies in particular, dogs are getting stolen by record numbers in the District of Columbia. Here's one, 10th Street and U. Man left his French bulldog in the car, and when he returned, the dog was gone. It's awful. By the way, it's really funny that people commenting on this on social media say people should stop leaving their dogs in the car. I'm like, hey, how about people stop stealing things from cars?
Yeah.
There are outrages at the owner for leaving the dog in the car.
Of course, but you know what? Honestly,
in January, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes, when it's 95 degrees out, you don't leave your dog in, especially without cracking the window.
Right.
But in January, you should be able to leave your dog in the car and hop into the store real fast.
Well, yeah, people are insane. I will say this, though. I think this might actually get people to pay attention to the crime if they're not a victim themselves.
That's a great point.
I've always said in Washington, it's so weird. You can walk away. I used to put my my first in the baby Bjorn and walk around.
Oh.
And people would not even look at you. Would not. I mean, some people did. But in general, people kind of
you walk around with a baby stroller.
You walk
and
around
it's
with a dog, and you can't even get 5 feet
Everyone
without
stops
someone
to talk to
stopping to talk to you.
That's a great point. Meanwhile, listen to this one. There were 8 puppies in a Mazda that was stolen yesterday in the Anacostia neighborhood of D.C. Police report says that this 2016 Mazda CX-5 with Maryland tags was stolen around U Street, southeast D.C., near Fendall, with a 5-week-old American pit bull puppies inside, and cute ones at that. I know this because the cops got them back. Members of the community found 7 of the 8 puppies, at least, and safely returned them to a district station.
Little Mocha. There's another story of
very cute.
A French bulldog named Mocha. But the dog was found safe. He was stolen, but he was found safe a little over a week after he was stolen at gunpoint. I mean, that's the one thing about this is dogs are very expensive, particularly, certain breeds.
Well, in Frenchies in particular,
Yes.
French bulldogs seem to be very popular,
Yes.
and because of that, there is demand for them, and that means that literally, criminals in Washington, D.C. are discerning which dogs are more valuable on the black market puppy market, and they're stealing these dogs. Give me your French. Forget about your purse. Forget about your wallet. Forget about your watch. I'll take the dog because these dogs can get up to like $800.
Oh yeah,
or more.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So there's now a string of Frenchie nappings over the last several months in Northern Virginia and in Washington, D.C. Again, I just want to reiterate this kind of thing. We're doing this as a critter news story about young little puppies, and you're right. This might actually get people's attention. They might do something. Now a politician will actually say, enough is enough. Now Muriel Bowser is going to say dog lives matter, right? We got to make sure that they're going to repaint the mural on the street.
Yeah, it's fine that a murderer is on the D.C. Sentencing Council, but you steal a dog
Don't
and
take our
people
dogs.
really get angry.
But it really is, again, it needs to be reiterated. This doesn't happen by accident. This happens because of the political movement that is trying to upend and reorient the basic Western civilization concepts of law and order that we have learned and applied effectively for centuries. They want to upend that. They say they do it because of systemic racism, but really they're Marxists, and it's to upend the basic societal norms that keep our country safe, protected, and thriving, because they don't want that. They want to tear this country down.
And the people, ultimately, the most vulnerable people, are the ones who suffer. That's what's so sad about this.
And the puppies. Remember that story out of San Diego where a non-commissioned officer in the United States Navy was arrested for selling military information to Chinese intelligence? The sailor has now been sentenced to 27 months in prison and a $5,500 fine. Let me just reiterate. Petty Officer Wang Heng Zhao, 26 years old, also goes by Thomas Zhao, lives in Monterey Park, California, pleaded guilty in October to one count of conspiring with an intelligence officer and one count of receiving a bribe, giving military secrets to the communist Chinese. And the sentence is 2 years and 3 months. And as Sean Davis at The Federalist points out, you walked through the doors of the Capitol building on January 6th that Capitol police officers opened up for you, and you are facing a much stiffer penalty than that.
Yeah, one guy who was in Baltimore at the time is serving 22 years in the penitentiary because of this. And look, now they're going after people who didn't even walk into the Capitol.
Right.
But we're standing outside.
Right. It's an odd one. Now, one suspects because there was a guilty plea that the trade-off was a lenient sentence. Maybe this person is giving a ton of information and turned a double agent or God knows what. Who knows? But on the face of it, this looks like our Justice Department and our military doesn't take this sort of thing that seriously. Certainly not as seriously as illegal parading without a permit on January 6th. It's 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good Tuesday morning to you at 6:36 here. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in. We are anticipating a busy day here on Capitol Hill, as well as just regionally with a major weather event rolling in just after noon today and throughout the afternoon. Rain, heavy rains, heavy winds. And we got you covered all across the board on those topics. Plus, at 7:05, Bruce Fleming, a professor at the Naval Academy, will join us about his book, Saving Our Service Academies. My battle with and for the U.S. Naval Academy to make thinking officers. 7:35, David Marcus, journalist across multiple platforms, will join us about these pro-Hamas protests in Manhattan. 8:05, Representative Andy Biggs will give us a preview of the Fauci, Mayorkas, and Hunter Biden agendas on Capitol Hill this week. And then at 8:35, Sean Kennedy, Virginians for Safe Communities. I am Larry O'Connor. She is Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Jules. All right, we've got this rule. I know you are plugged in on this because one of the major organizations pushing back on this new rule coming out of the executive branch of the Biden administration has been Independent Women's Forum. This is the independent contractor rule. They tried to legislate, so typical of Biden. They tried to pass a law. They couldn't get the votes, and now he's just pushing it through. And this is basically going to undermine, if not eliminate, independent contract work, the gig economy. Is that right?
Economy, which has been, especially at this time, helpful for people who might need to supplement their income.
Or in some cases, their only income because they can't get a regular
and this
job.
Is what people need to understand. This is fundamentally an attack on women because women so often want that flexibility at work. We know this. We can pretend that, women all want to be in the, the C-suite and they want to go, have this, very successful corporate career. No, women value flexibility. And the way in which I could stay home with my kids is I had essentially, I was a blogger early on.
Oh, no, this affects journalists. They passed this as a law in California. And all these liberal journalists, like the Huffington Post and the Red, they were all in favor of it. And the day after the law came in, they all got laid off.
Yes.
And they said, you want to keep working for us, you have to move to North Carolina.
Yes, exactly.
Because what it does is, just so everybody understands, it treats an independent contractor who is currently paid on a 1099. And more often than not, those people want to be paid that way. They want
to
be.
Have several
gigs across. Like David Marcus, our journalist friend. I often make fun of him because he won't land anywhere. He says he doesn't want to be a New York Post columnist. He doesn't want to be a Fox News columnist. He doesn't want to be a Daily Mail columnist. He is an independent contractor, and he writes for all of those different publications.
Freelance.
The Biden administration is now making a rule so that these 1099 employees will be treated like a W-2 employee, which adds huge obligations and cost to the employer.
Yes, which means they can't afford it.
Right.
Because
they will lose the work.
It's essentially demanding an employer bring on, double their staff and pay them and give them all these and
benefits, payroll taxes, mandatory overtimes, things like that. If you're an Uber driver, you want to drive more than 8 hours, you're now going to have to trigger for overtime. DoorDash, same thing. This is all gig economy stuff where people work as much or as little as they want, and I shouldn't call them employees. The independent contractors are in charge of their own destiny.
Yeah. Have you ever talked to an Uber driver?
Yeah.
And they'll say something like, oh, I do this, on weekends, or I do this.
I work 3 days a week, but I work 16 hours a day or something.
Yes. And I mean, it's going to destroy that.
Yep.
With the move of a pen, the swipe of his signature, we are going to destroy the gig economy in an economy where people are desperate to supplement their take-home pay. It's tragic.
The left-leaning Economic Policy Institute in a report last year estimated that a truck driver treated as a contractor earns up to $18,000 less per year than one who is deemed an employee, while construction workers' earnings drop by nearly $17,000, and home health aides lose out on up to $9,500 in pay and benefits. Let's be clear here. This is really all about benefits wrapped into the overall compensation package. The left-leaning groups and the Biden administration will say that employees are now being taken advantage of and they're being exploited by employers.
Because you're dumb.
By forcing them into these 1099 situations. Nearly 40% of U.S. workers, that means 64 million people, did some kind of freelance work in the last 12 months. And again, I want to reiterate, they tried to propose this in the House of Representatives when they had a Democrat majority in both the House and the Senate. They couldn't get it passed. They didn't have the votes for it. So now Joe Biden is just doing it with a stroke of his pen. It is unconstitutional. It will be struck down. But this is how they operate.
And one quick last thought. A lot of people moved from California when the governor instituted this rule, AB 5. A lot of people left because they said, I can't continue my life and I can't earn money. Now there's nowhere to go.
Kevin Kiley, a freshman congressman out of California, he was in the state legislature in Sacramento when AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, which instituted this in California, became the law. He's been a champion on this issue. He's been a champion on a lot of issues. As a freshman, Kevin Kiley is a superstar. He said, with a single stroke of Gavin Newsom's pen in 2019, AB 5 rendered countless independent professionals unable to earn a living in our state. Writers, interpreters, court reporters, musicians, language pathologists, photographers, forensic nurses. People in literally hundreds of other industries were told they were no longer allowed to practice their profession and serve their clients as they'd been doing their whole careers. Turning AB 5 into national policy, as Biden is set to do, will multiply these losses. Economic analysis by the Chamber of Progress shows the full-time or part-time jobs of between 3.2 to 3.8 million independent contractors could be lost, equivalent to roughly half the jobs lost in the Great Recession. We're going to keep an eye on this. We'll continue to educate and inform you on this. Hopefully we'll get Congressman Kiley on to talk about it as well as other experts. Go to Independent Women's Forum's website. Go to the Issues tab where they have this all laid out. It's so critically important. You're right. This is a direct attack on women. Women take advantage of the gig economy to be able to fill the gaps in their schedule so they can make money. And it's so critical. You guys have been champions on this.
Yeah,
and well done, you.
And on our staff, Patrice
Onwuka
our
leads
Friday
the charge,
co-host.
of course.
She is the point person on it, so check out her writings on it.
And understand who the Biden administration is and the fact that he brags about this. He bragged about this yesterday in his speech to the church, the dividing us along racial lines speech that he gave in Charleston, where he said, well, we tried to pass this law, but we couldn't get it done, so I just did it as an executive order. And he's warning us about Trump being an authoritarian. It's 6:44. We mentioned this, I think, yesterday, this little dust-up between maybe it was Friday, Mark Cuban and Elon Musk. I do love it when two billionaires are bashing each other over the head on social media about things.
Right.
Mark Cuban making the case for DEI, how important DEI is. Right?
Badly.
Very badly. And, of course, most people are saying, dude, because he's like, oh, this is good for business, and corporations are crazy if they don't do this. It's like, guy, if you've got the secret sauce, the secret formula to successful business, why are you keep it for yourself? And if other businesses choose not to go the DEI route and you think it's so bad for their business, guess what? The free market will eliminate those companies from existence. That's how it works.
Yep.
But, boy, he is just hell-bent on making sure that that everybody adopts his woke policies. And Elon Musk unearthed a video of him from a couple of years ago.
I know I'm prejudiced. I know I'm bigoted in a lot of different ways. You know, and I've said this before, if I see a black kid in a hoodie at night on the other side of the street, bouncing, you know, I'm probably on the same side of the street, I'm probably going to walk to the other side of the street.
By the way, Jesse Jackson said the same thing back in the 90s.
Okay, get to the bigoted part.
Right.
What?
So Elon Musk tweeted that video out and said, this explains Mark Cuban's ridiculous overcompensation regarding racism. Same thing happened with Me Too guys who got busted suddenly becoming fake ardent feminists. By the way, that applies to Mark Cuban, too. If you remember,
yes,
he was called out by the NBA for his overtly sexist and even sexual harassment policies that were implemented at the Dallas Mavericks.
Right. What I find so funny about Mark Cuban is he talks all this DEI baloney. Meanwhile, the Dallas Mavericks, if you look at the leadership of it's all white people.
Right. Yeah.
I think they threw an Asian in for like good measure.
The players, they do have actually. Dallas Mavericks are famous for having like one or two very good white players too. They've had some superstars there, but the point is, they're not hired. The players for the Mavericks, strangely, are not hired based on their skin color.
Yeah, I love
They're
that.
actually hired based on their physical abilities and their talent in basketball.
I don't know who wrote this, but someone said, so you're going to put a tiny, Asian person on your team.
Yes. A short Asian woman will be the new shooting guard for the Mavericks.
Right.
That was Elon Musk, who did that.
How far do you take this?
Well,
how far? I mean, according to Mark Cuban, that's what he should be doing.
It continues. It goes on and on. And Elon Musk wrote about the fact that the airline industry can't find enough qualified pilots because they're pushing these DEI requirements,
well,
right?
And obviously someone's not repairing those. That's another issue.
Was Alaska, yeah.
Yes.
But then Cuban said, well, Musk's response was later rebutted by Cuban, who told Musk that the goal applied to the training school and not the airline itself. Once they graduate, it's a multi-year process to have an opportunity to pilot for United, Cuban said, suggesting that United is not going to give the opportunity to a qualified pilot because of their skin color or because of that. Haven't we pushed past this for decades? And the answer is no, we have not, because there are way too many people in the corporate world who make a ton of money continuing to tell us all that we're racist and we're sexist.
Right. And, I just wonder, when was the last time Mark Cuban had to sit through a DEI training?
Right.
One of those videos where they tell you common sense and, how to have manners. Like, it's not nice to walk in to the break room and tell some lady she has a nice butt. Like, oh, I needed.
Was that wrong? Should I? There's a better way for you to tell me this, Julie, than right now. Gosh. Anyway, I have a suggestion for Mark Cuban if he really wants to cleanse himself of his racism and his bigotry, as he admitted here.
I know I'm prejudiced.
Okay, you know what? Great idea. Step down from your multi-billion-dollar corporation and empire and hand the entire thing over to a qualified African American.
Sorry.
No, an African American like
it.
Elon Musk. It's 6.